All right, welcome everybody to the Lead Generation World podcast. Thank you for joining us live. If you're on YouTube, welcome. If you're not, thank you for watching this at a later time. And just maybe just a quick recommendation is to subscribe to Lead Generation World, the YouTube channel, or even just on LinkedIn. You'll get notifications of new podcasts that will be coming live, and it's always kind of fun to have you here live, and you can comment there on the YouTube page, and we'll see it on our end. So if you have questions for myself or the guest today, feel free to interact. In fact, if you're on there, you can even just shoot us a quick hello, so we see you there watching us. But again, welcome. My name is Michael Ferree. Before we bring on our guest, I do want to make a couple announcements. One, we're really excited that we were able to bring Lead Generation World, the conference, to you all last month in Orlando. It went off really great, and I know a lot of you were really excited to get out and get to a conference and do it in a safe manner. And so we'll be doing this again, actually September, but we're bringing Contact.io back after a couple-year hiatus. Contact.io focuses on everything calls, texts, and messaging. And we're really going to dive into best practices, the future of tech, all sorts of different things revolved around the contact center space. So keep an eye out for that. You can go to contact.io and check out more information there. But without further ado, let me bring on our guest. We have Steve Biederman from Noble Biz. He is the president of Noble Biz, and we're going to be talking all things contact center as well. So Steve, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, great, Michael. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. And I love, a lot of times a guest, will agree to coming on the show and not quite realize that it's live. So I appreciate you, dealing with that, and maybe me popping it as a surprise on you.
Not a problem.
So I wanted to, before we get in, and we're getting probably a lot to talk about in a short hour here, but I want people to sort of get an idea of who you are first, and then we'll get into Noble Biz as well. But you've had a long history in the call center space, running companies. How'd you get into the space initially? Was it something that was intentional, or did you fall into it?
Not intentional at all. So I'm very old. Let's start there, and that's where you get a long history. And
see, no, just stop for a second. I thought your first company you were CEO of you were 13. That's why.
Not the Wunderkind. No, I started. There were two cans. There was a wax string, and I would.
Yeah, right.
Actually, back in 1978, I needed a job, and I got a job telemarketing in a little smoke-filled room where you celebrated a sale by lighting a cigarette and ringing a bell. And you didn't get to keep your job if you didn't make 6 sales a day. So, and we were doing it 6 days a week, and that was it. And I started calling. The truth is I couldn't wait to get away from that. But after it, I was there for a few years and started my own business.
Well, what were you selling? Let me just interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
Do you remember what you were selling in 78? Was it newspaper subscription? What was it?
It was chemical lawn care treatments for lawns. So we were fertilizing lawns with a program. And by the way, we were selling lawn care programs in December in the snow and getting a silver dollar for every sale that we made.
Well, geez, that's quite. I mean, no, that seems quite a challenge. That goes back to that whole. What's that old saying? You sell ice to an Eskimo.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, lawn care to an Eskimo in this case, but no, that's what we did. Yeah, but I did find the power of calling. It was sort of, in my mind, a guarantee that you could make sales if you gave it the effort and if you continued to dial phones, and that always stuck with me. And as time went on, I ended up working up in management in some major corporations of the time, and became a consultant to business to turn around businesses. And y- years later, I was in a new business for call that happened to be just with coincidence, call center technology, dialers. And it was in the late 90s. And I came in to help them build their marketing approach. And within a very short time, the owners quit. They couldn't fund it, but we had five customers. And I was faced with a dilemma. I didn't want to run a company. But I didn't want to abandon five customers because I knew, certainly in those days and even today, a call center system is really the heart and soul of the business. And if you stop supporting that, then you're going to kill those businesses, possibly, probably. And I just couldn't leave. So I stayed and I started what became known as Touchstar Software. And we were a leader, one of the world leaders over that first decade of the century, worldwide. And two guys starting on a park bench and ending with a global company with thousands of call centers.
So let me stop you there. So that was 2009 when you started that, I
No, it
believe.
was 1999, and then
Oh, 1999. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
2009
Yeah.
when we sold that. Yeah, I mean,
I'm
listen,
sorry.
I said I'm very old.
Yeah. So 99 on the heels of the internet and things going digital, quote unquote, right?
Yep.
What was it like from a technology standpoint back then in the call center space? Because I was actually thinking of asking this question when you were talking about in 78 and the late 70s and the 80s, what they were doing to make phone calls in an efficient manner. Was it a printed out list and they were actually dialing? And then but now, on the heels of the internet going to quote unquote digital, what was tech like back then for call
Well,
centers?
to go back to the 70s, it was calling off a list. It was taking paper. It was calling piles of paper and throwing them in front of a salesman if you were a sales manager, and they just dialed, and you had to make hundred dials a day, and that was sort of the minimum. Uh, when we started TouchStar, it was all on-premise systems. We were the first SQL-based system.
Hmm.
We really, it was loading data just like you do now. And I mean, it's simpler now, but you were loading data, calling campaigns, running multiple campaigns. We had set up, parent-child campaigns so you could, blend in a variety of campaigns. And uh, it was really actually very robust. And I would tell you that it's only today, and this is what, almost, well, 20 years later, that the hosted systems are competitive with what were originally out there in the early SQL based systems, because we just loaded up features. So everything that you do today was available then. Obviously not omni-channel, multi-channel though if you wanted to, and you could trick the system into having multiple screens. But as you were talking, I realized that I guess I have lived through the whole thing, from the beginning, from the manual dialing all the way through to where we sit today. I've never stopped to think of it that way.
Yeah, it's interesting because I wonder at what point, if at all, it went from call center industry to contact center,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because contact center is relatively new because now we're talking about omni-channel, right?
right, right. Well, I think at first what you see, and this is the aged man talking, you see the same thing happening with different names, and so you went from customer service to uh, client advocates to customer success, but what were they? They were
Yeah.
somewhat the same thing.
Yeah.
Uh, Same thing. In those days, the only way you really it was pertinent to contact somebody was through voice. As additional channels became available, it took a very long time for the centers to want to implement it because they knew what they could get with X amount of dialing and X amount of agents and X amount of data. And the money rolls in, and you have such a high overhead in keeping it rolling, it's very hard to implement something new. So I've always found that the centers are very, very averse to change. They like it, they want to look at it, they go to shows and get demoed it, but implementing it in the live environment has always been difficult. And what ends up happening is that call centers stay call centers when they could be contact centers. And it's only, I took over a different company as their CEO about 5 years ago, and we were turning them around. And everyone was saying, you've got to build omni-channel, you've got to build this. And the founder of that company was like, well, why do I need to build that? I don't see anybody adopting it. And today, that's not the case, right? It seems like all of a sudden, omni-channel is here. In fact, almost passe. So the truth is, contact centers became contact centers when people wanted to advertise a different name, but they
Yeah.
actually became contact centers in the last few years.
Do you think that I'm sure it's a combination potentially of a number of things, but that difficulty in implementation and change, right? Is it generally a tech thing, or is it a training thing, or is it management? I mean, I'm sure you've obviously been a leader of companies that probably are very hard to change, just
Yeah, yeah.
fundamentally, and technically can be extremely difficult too. So what do you think generally the challenge is? It sort of that leap into training and doing something new that's a little bit scary, or is the tech side of things,
Well, my experience is that most businesses are most comfortable saying no.
yeah,
It's the saying yes that creates the disorientation. So I would say that tech people oftentimes don't want to change because they're set in their routines and rituals, and there's secure, certainly job security in that. And I'm speaking generally. Obviously, there are many people not like that. I would tell you that the truth is, of an implementation, you have to remember that in this day and age, everybody is already using something. In my day, it was new technology, but today everybody's using something and it works. So getting over the hump to where the CEO believes that he can do an implementation without disrupting his environment becomes the real. I think that's the foundation issue. Certainly training, but there's another piece, and it's adoption by the agents. So the agents are doing their thing too, and
yeah,
it took them X amount of time to learn a system, and they're not welcoming something new. So once you get the CEO involved and he wants it, once you get the tech group involved and they want it, now you're dealing with the agents and the floor supervisors who really don't want it. And
yeah.
you know,
And
in
if they revolt against it or start complaining, now it doesn't really matter. Now you have
right,
problems.
right.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a quick story. This is back in the Touchstar days. We implemented a Fortune company, and we were planning to implement the entire X thousands of seats, but they rebelled. The agents rebelled against it. They wanted to manually dial off their PBX, and they were a successful company. And what they finally did to trick their agents into it was they set up a group of X hundred of agents, and they called it, "This is the money machine." And when you get to the last
Perfect.
week of the month, the top people can go on it if they choose to go on it, and they can,
Very smart.
they're going to get a lot more contacts. And so they tricked it to where it became a valuable tool and everybody wanted it, and then they spread it out.
Very smart. Very smart. A little behavioral manipulation right there is
Yeah.
always key.
Yeah, that's right.
That is great. It makes me think, kind of going back to what you were saying, back in 78, the telemarketer replaced the door-to-door guy, right?
Yep.
For the most part, and there's still door-to-door guys out there today, and different. I think Direct TV. I think there's some that still do it, but back then telemarketing was sort of the innovation of for sales of
Mhm.
efficient, more effective sales and knocking on every door. Now, uh, I mean, do you see sort of this messaging sort of thing as the next, you know, innovation that makes things more effective, or is it just is it or maybe it's just a different perspective that we just have that is consumers are choosing to communicate through different channels, maybe not necessarily more efficient or effective like from door to door to telesales, but
Right.
um, you know just kind of what are your thoughts on that from an innovation standpoint? Is it is text messaging sort of taking over the outbound dial now?
Well, I think it's a little different when I think about it. I realize that regulation is in place because people want it, because people see often what we do is intrusive. So at the same time, we know that there's still plenty of market out there, even though many people think we're intrusive. But you're always fighting that reality, which is society as a whole would tell you they prefer not to be contacted unless they want to be contacted. Okay, so what really needs to happen and is happening is finding other ways for them to find your audience. So you're finding your audience in the social areas, WhatsApp or Facebook or LinkedIn even, and chat and SMS or voice. And it's now become an or voice or chat or and or. So it really becomes more flexible. But what if I'm most honest, what I'm really doing is I'm chasing down the target because it's less of a target than it's ever been in an environment I can find them. And then I'm counting on my agent to use that connection with their professional expertise to actually optimize the contact. So it's truly, I'm just contacting somebody any way I can find them. And I think it's necessary. I think it really is not just an outcome of technology, it's an outcome of a minimal audience, an audience that keeps trying to hide from us. Now, the crazy thing is that it isn't all marketing. You know, it's plenty of client service. It's plenty of support. It's plenty of necessary reasons why I need to contact someone. But it's integrating any method at any time to make it work. What I will tell you is messaging has been going on in itself for God knows, as long as I've been in certainly manufacturing products. That being said, they've been done. It was different. It was done on this channel, and you would do messaging, and then on this channel you would take the inbound call, and nary the twain shall meet.
Yeah, we'll get into that, how Noble Biz sort of ties that in, because I'm curious about that. But I'm, you had mentioned early on that you also did some consulting, and the first thing that came to my head when you mentioned that, or is, is it the tech, or is it the training, or is it the, I'm sorry, is it the script, or is it the agent? Kind of, what is generally the issue with sales? Um, and it kind of segues into this now training question of an agent. I think they're potentially different, maybe people or not. I don't know, but now you're having them do text messaging as well versus just read off a script and do outbound or inbound phone
Right.
calls. How are companies evolving with their employees, their agent base, to manage? Maybe they silo off messaging to one group. I don't know. Tell me a little bit how, like, people are managing this omni channels, all these different messages coming in from a single individual and going into an agent that's properly trained to handle that.
Well, I think what we want on the technology side is more than what the contact center is using today. In other words, we see it, as I said, where you can just train all your agents on all of the usability tools, and then have them make contacts any way they can, optimize that contact, and become professionals and humans in how to do it with text as they would with voice or video or otherwise. Um, that being said, contact centers, like I see them as liking to silo. So they want to silo their revenue streams. So they want to make sure that they're quantifiable, and that means a limit to the amount of channels. So they may give somebody voice and video. They may give somebody text, uh, where your goal is to move them to voice.
Hmm.
Uh, but ultimately, I've just seen it as narrow use of the channels. The truth is this, like with NovoBiz, our ability to use a wide range of channels simply, where an agent can take in 10, 15 minutes, get fully trained on how to use them all, probably proficient after a day of it, is simple enough that you should be able to assign your agents any method and say contacts are the key, however you choose to do it. But the contact center wants, certainly, and I understand it, they want to control the environment, and that means control what you can control, manage the data, manage the approach to agent communication, limit it to more narrow and definable spaces that are measurable.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because when you think about, when at least when I initially thought about an agent having to manage all, it seems quite problematic,
Yeah,
and a liability, probably in more ways than one. Um, but yeah, that makes more sense to me. Now, I am curious about this. You've been sort of on the tech side of the call center or contact center space for many years, and from my layman point of view, I would, and I worked at a call center for 3 years as a biz dev on the sales side, so I wasn't really involved in the tech side of things. But um it seemed sort of archaic, some of the technologies out there, and maybe archaic's not the word, but they just didn't seem to be innovating quite like I would have
yeah,
thought.
right.
And do you think that is slow? Innovation has been slow to the call center space, and is there a tipping point now where we're going to see more and more innovation within the tech space, or is it still kind of at the
I
same pace?
I mean, honestly, I think of the industry as the slowest adoption industry I'm aware of, and I think it is because it's controllable and it's definable, and as long as you're making your margin, here's the thing. The greatest risk in a contact center is the overhead that goes with it when it comes to agents. Obviously, they're their only advantage, but they're also the greatest overhead. So you have to keep them working at the relative margin that you need to run your business. And I'm not even talking about and be profitable in your business. So if you have 500 agents or 100 or even 50 or 1,000, you have this same issue, which is I have to make sure today in front of me I'm making my margin, because I can't get that too out of whack, because payroll is going to be very, very expensive in a week or two. So what that means is I'm gonna be very careful how I adopt, not only because it's disruptive to adopt, but because I don't know what my outcome's going to be. So here's what you see today. You see, and this is what we do. We set up people recognizing this with pilot programs. So everything is a pilot. Carve out a work group that is affordable, and use that group and see how you can expand that to more campaigns. So that takes a long time, right? So if our sales cycle is 6 to 9 months, then and that's reality, to tell you the truth, and six may be low. Now, if that's the case, now adopting it, if in my day back on the on-premise days, it was a 6-week process from the day you signed your contract till it was implemented and trained, today it's 3 months. Now, it doesn't mean I can't bring somebody up and running in 24 hours. I mean, I can
Sure.
do that, but
Yeah.
all of the integrations, all of the proof of concept, all of that has to be done, and the assurance that if the contact center adopts it, even though they want to, they're going to make darn sure that they can afford to do it, and it won't disrupt their business relationship with their customers. So it's like, even in the best world, you're looking at X amount of 12 months, 15 months, 18 months to really do this well. So yeah, it's going to take a long time for these people to change. Now, what happens here? Once I've adopted omnichannel and I've learned how to do it, how quickly will I go to whatever the next innovation is? I mean, the next one though is the one that they really need to go to quicker, and it's AI, because that's the way they reduce their challenge of overhead. And I mean this in all due respect to agents, but the truth is, automate what you can automate, use agents only where you need them, and this is how you run your business by managing your overhead.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that. I was going to ask you about, we're going down that path of innovation for a moment with AI and avatars and, natural language type of things. How is that? Tell me a little bit about that. How is that developing? How is that being used? When should people use it? When should they not use it? Because I'm
Sure.
sure there is you can't just use it for every scenario, right?
Well, I called my airline. I'm in Washington on a trip. Called my airline, did the entire thing in an automated way.
Yeah.
I changed my ticket. It was all automated. I had a conversation, but it was with an AI avatar. So really, it was very normal to do that. And when given the option to speak to an agent, I'm like, why would I do that? One, I don't want to wait. Two, I don't want to make sure they understand what I'm saying versus AI just they are getting exactly what you're saying, and if they don't, you can then opt out. It's incredibly valuable. I think that um, it should be, I just think everybody needs to be looking at that pretty quickly. That being said, I hope that the way the process goes is go from many people still have their on-premise voice systems that you thought of as archaic, and they still have them because they've already paid for them. They don't want a new monthly overhead for their technology. So those people need to change into a cloud-based system and reduce their overhead, internal overhead that way, make it efficient, and then it's easier to implement these new technologies because it's already there. So when we upgrade, all of our thousands of agents are getting upgraded at the same time, and it's much easier today. I think what you'll see, you're seeing a new generation of owners of contact centers today, and I think they're going to move faster than the old generation because the old generation always had a foot in just voice, and the new generation they don't want to be just voice. They say, well, minimally, we're going to make sure that we figure ways out to route contacts to all forms of channels. And obviously, I want to implement AI because why would I do automation and then cut off the part that actually saves me the most money, which is my overhead?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it makes sense. And what certain AI is tricky though, right? I mean, it's very complicated to get sometimes right, and that learning of what's happening. But I suppose it's more almost like a is it voice recognition? Is that
Yeah,
what
it's voice. I mean, it's based in speech technology.
it is? Okay.
And the technology itself has been around quite a long time. It's the smoothness of it. It's
Yeah.
the natural voice ability, to be recognized, and it's the ability to AI to use other types of channels too, not just voice, and to be able to respond to digits and other forms. But it's just absolutely what has to happen if you're going to truly have a true omni experience, a complete one. And by the way, yeah, machine learning, there is learning, but everything is learning, and that makes it sound like it's harder. It's not harder. And people like us, other companies that produce this type of technology, we're well practiced in how to implement. So contact centers shouldn't worry about that piece. They should just simply make a decision if they can integrate something like that in their business, and then trust the company you choose. Don't choose a company because of cost. Don't choose them because of a wow thing. Choose them because you're safe with them, which goes back to the client experience.
How does it work at Noble Biz as far as the AI, the learning for each client, or is it a general? Maybe you can just educate me a
Yeah,
little bit
I
on how
can.
the AI works a little
Well,
bit.
let me explain this.
Yeah.
NovaBiz today we are out with Omni Channel. We call it Omni Plus. And by the way, we're a carrier too, so we kind of control all ends of this communication.
Okay.
Uh, Today, we are evaluating integrations for AI. So today, Michael, you say I need AI. We're going to pick one with you, and then we're
Got
going to integrate it. We're not writing AI ourselves today.
it.
Uh, we've had the opportunity, because we're a global company, to interview AI firms that specialize specifically in that in a very tight form all over the world. And we've come to the decision that we can be agnostic to some degree. We have special products that we think do special things, but really we can be agnostic and we know how to do the integrations. But look, I really think that AI is the next stage. I think the stage today is everybody get on the cloud, number one, or even if it's your own cloud, get on the cloud one way or the other. And then two, implement what today is a contact system, which is omni-channel, which has any kind of channel or the ability to pull in new media channels as they come out and surprise us into the base system that you have. And that's what NovaBiz has. Then as you see, there are efficiencies that you can use with the AI area of automation. Then choose the right product. It's a specialized field, and then use the kind of company that can integrate that into the Omni experience.
It's interesting because, going back to the whole sales process for you guys, obviously it's a long thing. And one of the big stumbling blocks is, individuals or companies that are scared of change
Yeah,
and doing something new, and is it going to work and all that sort of stuff. And I would think that if I'm a call center manager or operations guy and I'm looking at new technologies, that's exactly what I need, is something that's going to be flexible to integrate with other things that I have a base with, that can do all those sorts of things and build on top of, and that's continuing innovating and continuing to build out. Because I'm guessing is that, some of these companies get locked into a system, and it is their company. Everything revolves around this process, and everything, their reports and, you name it, is all in this thing. And God forbid you take that core out and you put
right.
in something else that doesn't work. So they get stuck and afraid to stay in that sense. So my guess is that's a big, attractive selling point, is to have a platform like a Noble Biz that can integrate and continue to evolve with you, not slow you down.
Well, think about this. We are an Omni experience, but we didn't develop WhatsApp. We didn't
Yeah.
develop Facebook, right? We developed the tools to use WhatsApp in it, or Facebook, or other things within it, voice within it. Uh, the technology in this day and age is very, very specialized. And, it's a complex technology built on a number of interactions and lots of events occurring at the same time in the tens, hundreds, millions, simultaneously, per se. And so it's very, very difficult. So stay within what you are. And really, I can't stress it enough that the company that you feel you can work with, because we talk with you, we communicate. In other words, we're hearing you. We're like a part of your team. That's the company to go with in terms of the future. We're not the only one like that. We certainly feel that we're very good at that, but I don't want to disparage any of the companies, because I think that all companies that are doing it right should be a bit agnostic.
Yeah. Let's go back to the innovation topics a little bit more. We're going to be putting on this conference on in contact, and some of the conversations I've had just recently are sort of around that natural language, that speech recognition technology, and then also I don't know, I haven't quite gone down the path, but the almost virtual reality and like deep fake kind of stuff, right? Where someone, it's my voice, and it's like an avatar, but it's my voice and it's reacting and it's doing different things. I don't know where that is. I haven't had gone down that path that too far, but when we look ahead 10, 15, 20 years from now, and we look at AI and we look at all these automation tools that are being built, is that sort of where we see these things kind of going, where it's really machines having these conversations in a very smooth and organic way?
Yeah, in fact, surprising you that they're not human, right? Uh, or maybe it's that the audience doesn't care whether it's human, they feel connected to it. So it is a matter of building the technology to where you can feel connected to it. So if we believe that automation will take us to that virtual reality piece where it's the whole experience is automated, and I'm talking, am I talking to you, are you real or not, I don't know. If we
Yeah.
assume that, then where do where do people fit into it becomes really the question. So I think people fit into it if people don't trust the AI. And there's always going to be a segment that doesn't trust technology and wants a real person to talk to. So I think you may see specialized contact centers where we are the contact center that talks to you. We're real people. There'll be contact centers certainly with work groups that are real people. But I guess in my own mind, I believe that eventually, in 15 years from now, you're probably going to be looking at the greatest ROI is going to be a without agent experience.
Yeah, and it doesn't. And the way I'm just thinking of it right now is, at its core, is cost, lowering the cost of doing business, right? Making phone calls, and that's what drives people to go offshore, right? To the Philippines or other countries to have, because to get cheap work, right, or
Right,
inexpensive work.
right.
So now, and a lot of time, I don't know if this is true, but I would think they keep the onshore folks for the high touch maybe calls or whatever it may be, that the important ones. Maybe the AI, the automation really just removes the need for offshore versus the onshore high touch individuals. I don't know.
Well, yeah, then I don't think it even matters. I mean, then it matters. Listen, when you build a business, any business, you're looking at your cost of running your business. What is the cost of running my business, and how do I make money on the other side? And this will sound very caustic, but it is never how can I build a business to satisfy my staff. It's just not done that way. So we may be very caring, but that's after the fact. The day I decide I'm going to build a business, I'm thinking of what is my overhead and cost. And if I have a model that I can feel will can be optimized with lower cost and still high value, and it doesn't include another expensive overhead, or it'll reduce my overhead. And in contact centers, it's space, it's technology. Well, you're stuck having to buy technology. You're not stuck having to buy space anymore. You can control that. So what's left to control? It's the agent piece,
Hmm.
and not to eliminate it. And by the way, I'm not speaking how I want to see the world.
Right.
As a human being and someone that cares about people, I'd like to see people totally integrated into it and expanding it, and the people using the technology. But do I think it's going to go that way over the next decades? I don't. I don't think it should, because if it does, then the model of how to build a business has gone out the window.
Yeah. What is it that what is it called, the technology where you'll have an agent that'll be hitting numbers for responses on multiple calls at one time?
Yeah, it's called a clicker for ease of a term, and it's really to circumvent regulation. That's the whole point of it, and
Okay.
and it's simply that in the states, and it's really, by the way, we are all over the world. We don't have any other country that needs a clicker except the United States. They need, and here it's the human intervention where people are concerned that they're out there dialing numbers in an automated fashion to audiences that they're not supposed to dial in an automated fashion. What they do is they put a work group of people in where the calls come in bulk, a lot of calls at the point that they would essentially get distributed out. There, people are sitting there like this,
And they're
and it's gone through the courts, and the courts say, yeah, that is okay because that's human intervention. It's not an automated call. My finger placed the call, or a human finger placed the call, human intervention. And so when this started, I was like, no way. Who's going to do that? Who's going to have a work group? But you said it earlier that you can have people all over the world that are less costly, that become affordable to do this without getting me in trouble from a regulatory point of view. So I thought that it wouldn't stick. One, because it didn't seem practical to me, but two, it wouldn't stick because eventually it would be regulated out because it circumvents the intention of the FCC and the TCPA regulations. The intention is quit automated dialing to people you're not supposed to do it to.
yeah,
Okay, so quit slamming the world with a heck of a lot of contact. So what did contact centers do? They said, how do I deal with that? Well, I'm just going to put 50 people over here, and we're going to go like this all day, and it's going to mimic to as close as we can predictive dialing at that pace, and that passes the court's muster. So,
mm,
yeah, we have it. Everybody has it today. It started out in the collections
interesting.
world. Now everybody has it.
Interesting. Speaking of regulations, obviously, what was it, a couple weeks ago? The whole ATDS thing kind of got a little bit more defined, right? Was it through
Well,
Facebook?
the two areas that I'm aware of, and I'm not our compliance
Yeah,
division, but the two areas I'm aware of is that there was a decision made that reduced the pressure of not being able to automatically dial, and meaning that there is some, and I can't define it on this call, unfortunately, but there is
yeah,
some level now of you can be more liberal in how you approach automatic dialing, and I would suggest everybody looks at that. Now, in the collections world, they have there are decisions that have come into play coming in October that have been approved that allow contact centers to use a wide range of channels, omni channels, essentially many channels in an omni environment to contact their debtors where through cell phones and other areas. So listen, I've been standing aside and just developing technology over the years to accommodate what people want, but there is no question in truth that you're seeing it's always a tap dance between contact centers and regulation and the audience. And there's some odd assumption that the audience is different from the regulation. The regulation is really an outcome of the audience, right? I mean, you don't get
right.
regulation without an audience saying, I need regulation. But so it's a tap dance around these rules. And because there are so many people in our country or in the world, there's always a place you can contact somebody to make whatever it is you're doing work.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. On going back to something you also said, with obviously COVID, and everybody is remote now, right?
Yeah.
And how is that? I mean, I think that's likely a good thing because you don't have to have the massive office space with hundreds of people sitting next to each other in cubicles and all this sort of stuff. Would not to say that it's not beneficial or the right way to go, and that's sort of my question here. When you walk into a normal call center, you'll have a couple floor managers walking up and down. they'll be stationed right in the middle. People can come up and ask questions. They can walk and do all these sorts of things from a quality control or management standpoint. Now they're all at home. Maybe their internet connection's okay, maybe it's not. Different challenges, but from a quality control standpoint, how have you seen some of these, call centers sort of adapt and ensure that the calls are still, up to par from a quality standpoint?
Well, from a quality standpoint, is I think one of the key pieces, but it's also from a control standpoint in terms of just I'm used to running my business in a building where my floor supervisors are on the floor
Yeah.
supervising, and there are great advantages to that because I've only seen it that way. Um, we, as an example, when March of last year happened, we shut down our hard offices. I mean, we had them, but we didn't really use them, right? We moved over 250 people home in an instant, in a week. By the way, the technology allows you to do that. So now we're all at home. Do I feel today that we're as successful in our client experience as when we were in the office? I actually do. In fact, in some ways, I feel that we're more successful because there's less noise
Mm.
around you. It sounds, you're just focused on that person. But what have we done? We've brought in other things to connect with our agents that are new and innovative, but try to mimic the experience of the office. So we do daily yoga, as an example, where 15-minute desktop sessions. We set up Zoom, and we put all teams or work groups in a Zoom room where it's just there. Okay, it's just there. The video is on, and it's there for to talk to each other when you need to, or
It's
the
a human
manager.
connection too. You can
Yeah,
see the other person. I mean, granted,
yeah,
it's video is video, but you're not alone.
exactly. And by the way, that not alone is the key, right?
Yeah.
I think. Now, does it mimic a supervisor you can go to, or
Yeah.
the water cooler experience? It doesn't. You can't. If we're comparing it,
Yeah.
you can't really come up perfect. But if you take it on its own, can I run my business? Can I give a client the right experience? And can I motivate my employees to be successful? Yeah, you can do all of that. So ultimately, I just think naturally you're going to see less investment by contact centers in hard space because, as I said, control your overhead. Again, space, that's something you need to
Mhm.
control. It's not going away. It should change.
Do you suspect the majority of these companies will stay remote?
Yeah, well, I know right now we're dealing with that, and uh, we're seeing it, within
Yeah.
our own customer base. We're also seeing work groups go back to work, but they're less volume per square foot. Okay, so I'm not seeing a lot where you're plexiglassing off agents. I'm not seeing a great
Yeah.
deal of investment in what you may have expected, which is all that's required to invest in that workstation. Uh, Come on, contact centers are not looking to invest big money when they don't already know the outcome. I've
Yeah.
never seen it in the industry. I know that I might upset people by saying it, but I've just not seen that personality in contact centers.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, and I've never really thought about it, but obviously a call center as basic, and a old form of contacting that you would think, but it's really it's down to the numbers on every
Yeah,
single thing, every
yeah.
single thing. The margins may or I don't know what the margins are, but it's down to hours, it's down to dials, it's down to seat costs, all this sort of stuff, which shouldn't come to any surprise because most businesses should be down. But I think the way this business is built and run, it's very much down to every last
It's
penny,
all
what it costs.
analytics. It's
Yeah,
right. Everything that you can measure is measured,
yeah,
and then you use that measurement on a living, breathing way each day to consistently improve the margins. And so the major obstacles to that are the hard costs in a business. So as you can reduce those, if you can find that you can have a reasonable experience versus the perfect experience in an office, but in the reasonable experience, it's affordable. And the other one, I just lost a percentage of my margin. Listen, I know a lot of contact centers will say, no, Steve, we care about giving the best quality and we want to be around our people. And I
Of
believe
course.
there are those
Yeah.
contact
Yeah.
centers.
Yeah.
I just think there's going to be less and less of them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. I really wanted to ask you about some other things, but we're running up here on the top of the hour, and I don't want you're on your traveling, and I want to give you some time to continue to do that. But I am kind of curious, just on a personal thing. One thing that caught my eye on your LinkedIn is not call center related. You work on a board that helps independent living, and I'm
Yeah.
really curious to know how that started, how you got involved, and what you guys are doing.
35 years ago, my family was looking for a way for my brother, who was just learning disabled, to have a quality life similar to all of their children.
Hmm.
You couldn't find any way to do that. So they just finally, out of frustration and with another family, said, what do we want? How would we do it? And we want independence for our child to the level they can attain, and their freedoms, and that we want for all our kids. And so they built it, and they started with 5 families, and they built this small apartment group within a normal apartment complex, because it was, we have an integrated way of saying we live in the world, not segregated from the world. And
Hmm.
today we have 65 residents 35 years later, and we're just world renowned in what is going on, what we do. And it's a community, it's a village, and I have the it's the best part of my life to be the chairman of the board of Foundation for Independent Living.
That is really, really great. And is it in one location, or is this
Yeah,
multiple locations, or?
Fort Lauderdale area, and
Mhm.
which is where my family was. And we don't see this as a franchise type of a thing. It's really just us
Yeah,
building a village. It's like saying, would you take your village and move it all over the country? Well, no, no, we can't do it. That being
yeah.
said, people come and study it, and have
Good.
since built their own, and we support that, because there are
Yeah.
so many people that deserve the freedom that we get in our lives. Just because they have other limitations shouldn't limit them.
Yeah, I mean, care, especially living care for special needs is I it's never been that great, right?
No, it's not.
Unfortunately. And have you seen it over the last, 30 years improve? I mean, or is it still an area where people need to focus and
I
and,
think
and see where they can do it? Yeah.
I think society is society, and there are people with prejudice, just like they've always been. But I also think that there's now education in the classroom. You can go to college and get degrees in this that you couldn't 35 years ago. So there's more emphasis. The ability to train people is improving. But bottom line is this: you're just a person, I am, as is my brother. And we all just want a normal life. We don't want more attention or less attention. And
Yeah.
we accept that some people don't like me, or some people don't like you. And my brother gets to do that too. What I believe is, just build a community that allows people to live life on life's terms, and then give them the support they need to fulfill some of the ambitions they have. And that's what we do.
Yeah, that's really, really great. I'm glad you were able to share that, and frankly, it's a pleasure to meet you and talk with you. I guarantee you probably could have done this for another hour. But
Yeah.
uh, so Noble Biz, if people want to find out more, they obviously go to the website. Just put it up, noblebiz.com. Any other suggestions on finding out more about your guys' contact center technology and solutions?
Well, it's called Omni Plus with a plus sign.
Mhm.
And reach out to me too. It's steve.biederman at noblebiz.com. And you'll see us everywhere. Certainly, I think people see our knowledge every day. We're putting out quite a bit of content. So just look for us. We just want to talk to you. We have a great, we think, a great solution for people, and our pilots are free. The licensing is free. Our goal is really to introduce ourselves and get to know all of our staff. Like hopefully you've gotten to know me today.
Yeah, no, it's great. Well, we've had another a great employee of yours, Michael McGuire,
Yeah,
on, which is a
right.
really good guy as well, and extremely knowledgeable in the call center space too. So certainly an asset to probably not just you, but your clients as
Well,
well.
I'll tell you, Michael taught us something.
Yeah,
He comes as a director of operations in contact centers,
yep,
and we're finding how well Michael works with clients because he knows their world. And
yeah,
we've decided to change the profile of our sales experience to just have people with, frankly, Michael's background that
yeah.
are not coming from sales and just presenting software, but coming from the life and presenting what does that life need, and that's how we're doing it. We're trying to listen to our clients.
I think that makes a lot of sense. It's almost like that old, when Apple was it Apple that came out with this sort of evangelist,
Right,
that
right,
evangelist position, right? That was an
right.
advocate not just for the company, but also the consumer
Yeah.
and the communication between the two. And I think that's smart thing, and you got a good guy there for you. But well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. If anybody has any questions, I've got the email up there for Steve. You can reach out to him or reach out to Noble Biz. But otherwise, maybe I'll be able to hold you down for another hour in the future, and we can talk a little shop
Love to
again.
do
But
it.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you
All right.
again. Thanks for having me.
Have a good rest of your day.
Bye bye.